The night hums with the low, mechanical breath of a sleeping giant. Deep beneath layers of concrete and steel, the heart of the reactor beats. Steady, unassuming, until a subtle tremor ripples through its rhythm, a pulse. No louder than a whisper, yet heavy enough to make the air taste of copper and fear. Above, the control room lights flicker once, then again, before holding steady. Somewhere a monitor pings, ignored by tired eyes and fading focus. But in that moment, the line between safety and devastation narrows to the width of a wire. The silence thickens, pressing in from every wall as if the building itself is holding its breath. Outside, the sea crashes softly against the shore, unaware that within this fortress of steel, a single heartbeat has already begun to falter. The hum of the control room fractures into a stutter, lights flicker, monitors blur, and a hiss crackles through the intercom like a whisper caught in static. Daniel freezes, eyes narrowing as the numbers on his screen distort into gibberish. Somewhere beneath, a sound rises, not mechanical, but alive, like breath pushing through metal lungs. Lena leans forward, adjusting the frequency, but her voice trembles when she calls out. The sensors aren't responding. The air turns heavy, the scent of ozone sharp in their throats. They've lost contact with the coolant regulators. The silence that follows is unbearable. A silence that feels intentional, as if the building itself has chosen not to speak. Daniel's fingers hover above the console. Somewhere deep in the grid, something moves. A shudder runs through the facility, deep and resonant. A mechanical heartbeat misfiring. The floor trembles beneath Daniel's boots as readouts flash red across the wall. A coolant line, somewhere near the core, has ruptured. Pressure levels spike, then fall, then spike again, like the reactor is gasping for air. Lena calls for a manual override, her voice steady but thin. The control rods refuse to respond. Every system they touch returns only one word: locked. Daniel glances toward the sealed reactor door, the faint vibration in the steel matching the rhythm of his pulse. The building moans, a low, metallic wail echoing through corridors. Somewhere, alarms begin to cry. In the chaos, Daniel finds rhythm, method, logic, breath. He moves through the storm like a surgeon through blood and steel, isolating one system after another. Lena routes power manually, sparks biting at her gloves. Each second they delay, the temperature rises, and the core, once stable, begins to pulse with erratic light beneath the reinforced glass. They're not fighting the machine anymore. They're fighting time itself. The reactor's pulse accelerates, the hum deepening into a drone that vibrates through the bones. Daniel's voice cuts through the alarm's shriek. "Seal Sector 4! I'll go to the manual bypass." The words hang heavy. He knows what that means. So does she. The elevator groans as Daniel descends into the reactor level. Each flicker of the lights marking another step closer to the core. The air grows denser, charged with radiation and heat. Through the degraded floor, molten reflections ripple like liquid fire. His earpiece buzzes faintly with Lena's voice, calm, focused, but distant, fading in and out like a dream through stat. He checks the manual override wrench strapped to his belt. The door below opens with a hydraulic hiss, revealing a corridor bathed in pulsing red. Steam curls from every seam, and beneath it all a low rhythmic thump, the sound of the reactor's heart beating too fast. He takes one breath, then another, and steps into the inferno. The stairwell groans with every step Daniel takes, the air pressing tighter the deeper he goes. The sound of turbines fades behind him, replaced by the steady hum of the reactor below. The metal under his boots vibrates with invisible energy, alive and warning. Above, the intercom crackles with Lena's voice, her tone clipped and urgent. The core temperature is climbing faster than projections. He tightens his grip on the handrail, eyes locked ahead as shadows dance against the rusted steel. Somewhere beneath, a pressure valve releases a sharp hiss like an exhale. It's no longer a malfunction, it's a living chain reaction, and he's heading straight into its lungs. The core chamber stands before him like a cathedral of power, vast, echoing, and alive. Through the reinforced glass, the containment pool glows an eerie blue, its surface trembling with invisible heat. Daniel's reflection shimmers across the surface, fractured and ghostly. The temperature gauge on his wrist ticks higher, numbers glowing red against his skin. Lena's voice crackles again, urging caution, but interference swallows her words. His breathing grows shallow inside the helmet, the sound amplified, rhythmic, like machinery in sync with his pulse. He moves closer to the observation panel, eyes fixed on the pulsing light beneath. The heartbeat of everything they're trying to save. Lena's fingers blur across the console keys as she reroutes circuits one by one. Sparks jump, lighting her eyes with brief bursts of gold. Alarms wail from every corner of the control room. Director Halvorsen leans in, shouting instructions no one can hear over the din. The communication feed to the lower chamber is breaking apart, words dissolving into static. Lena forces a manual connection, her knuckles white around the mic. When Daniel's voice finally cuts through, it's distant, hollow, echoing as if underwater. For the first time, she hears something she's never heard from him before: hesitation. Daniel grips the manual override wheel, its metal freezing despite the rising heat. The hiss of the core fills the chamber. A ceaseless, unnatural sound, like the sea boiling in its sleep. He twists, but the mechanism resists, locked by years of neglect and corrosion. Sweat burns his eyes as the wheel groans under his strength. He knows if it seizes entirely, the pressure will breach containment. A tremor shakes the room, dust falling from overhead pipes. He braces, pulling harder, muscles straining against steel and fear. Then, with a scream of metal, the valve begins to turn. The sound is deafening. The reactor exhales. A thunderous crack rips through the plant, echoing down every corridor. The floor shifts beneath Daniel's feet, and the world tilts. A secondary coolant pipe ruptures near the containment bay. Lena's voice breaks through, shouting coordinates he can barely make out. The chamber fills with white mist, blinding, searing his lungs. Somewhere in the chaos, a siren changes pitch. Low, continuous, unending. That's the sound of containment, breach warning. He looks up toward the catwalks above, red lights pulsing through fog, and knows the time for control has ended. What comes next is sacrifice. The reactor chamber vibrates with an angry hum, its light pulsing faster, brighter, almost frantic. Daniel stands before the manual control unit, a rusted wheel locked behind layers of ice-cold metal. He braces himself and begins to turn, slow, deliberate, his breath fogging the inside of his visor. Above, he hears the groan of shifting steel, the creak of bolts giving way. The core temperature reading on his wrist flares red, flashing critical. The radio sputters. Lena's voice cuts through in pieces, urging him to stop. The pressure is too high. But Daniel doesn't stop. Every motion of the wheel sends a tremor through the floor, and with it, a sound. The core crying out. In the control room, Lena's hands tremble as she types, trying to stabilize the secondary containment. Each command she inputs returns an error. Director Halvorsen shouts over the rising alarm, but she barely hears him. Her screen shows Daniel's vitals. Heart rate surging, oxygen depleting. She calls out his name again and again, but the connection is breaking apart, dissolving into a hiss. For a moment, the lights flicker out entirely, plunging the room into total darkness. When power returns, the display shows one final warning. System override engaged. Manual control only. Her breath catches. He's locked himself in. The reactor's hum shifts. Lower. deeper, like a growl. Daniel can feel the vibration in his chest. He grips the railing for balance as the floor tilts beneath him. Steam jets burst from every joint in the pipes, creating a blinding fog. The manual wheel resists again, halfway through its final turn. He checks the pressure gauge. It's beyond the red. One more rotation, and the system resets. One mistake and it ruptures. The radio crackles. Lena's voice pierces through, faint but clear. Daniel. Stop. He closes his eyes for half a second, remembering the city above, the people asleep, unaware. Then he pulls. The alarms stop. The sound is so sudden, so complete, it feels unreal. Steam continues to hiss, but the roar of the reactor fades to a low, exhausted hum. Daniel stands motionless, hands still on the wheel, chest heaving. The red lights begin to dim, replaced by the faint pulse of blue stability indicators. He leans against the console, eyes shut, every muscle trembling. Above, the intercom crackles once more. Lena's voice breaks through, small, fragile, and trembling with disbelief. Containment holding, we're stable. But Daniel doesn't answer. He's still listening. Listening for the silence that means the world has been spared. Lena restores power to the comms and opens the channel. Static fills the room. She waits, voice cracking as she calls his name again. No response. She adjusts the frequency, desperate, fingers trembling. Finally, a faint voice answers. Soft, distant, fading. It's done. She exhales a shaky breath, tears cutting clean lines through soot on her cheeks. For a heartbeat, the plant is silent. Then the emergency lights flicker one last time before extinguishing completely, leaving only the pale morning light creeping through the narrow windows. The meltdown never came. The city will never know. But history will always remember the moment the world almost ended. And the one man who refused to let it. Smoke curls through the lower levels, whispering along the walls like ghosts fleeing the fire. The reactor hums quietly, docile now, as if exhausted by its own fury. Daniel stirs among twisted metal and pooling water, his body heavy, every breath shallow and strained. His visor flickers with static, the heads-up display barely functional. He looks around the chamber. Steam, light, and silence. The world above still exists because of this quiet. He reaches for the railing, dragging himself upright. The wrench lies beside him, half submerged, glinting like a relic. For the first time in hours, the building feels still. The danger is gone. Only the cost remains. In the control room, Lena sits motionless, headset dangling from her neck. The alarms are silent now, replaced by the faint hum of cooling fans. The walls are blackened with smoke, the air thick with the smell of metal and ozone. Director Halvorsen leans against the railing, staring at the readouts that all read nominal. Yet none of them speak. Every second of silence stretches like an eternity. Every flicker of light, a question unanswered. Lena glances toward the speaker one last time, whispering Daniel's name under her breath, as if afraid to summon the truth. The radio responds with only the soft static of absence. Hours later, emergency crews descend through the reactor levels, their boots splashing through shallow pools of irradiated water. The metallic echo of their movements fills the corridors once filled with sirens. Lena walks among them, her suit newly donned, her gaze scanning every shadow. When they reach the containment bay, she freezes. The manual override wheel, fully engaged, glints under the flickering lights. Nearby lies Daniel's wrench, his name engraved along the handle. She kneels beside it, fingertips trembling as she touches the cold metal. The silence answers her before anyone else can. Somewhere in that quiet, she feels the reactor exhale. Steady, alive, because of him. Days later, the official report is drafted. The meltdown was averted due to swift engineering intervention. No name is attached, no acknowledgement beyond a single footnote in a file marked confidential. Outside, News anchors speak of routine maintenance and system resilience. Inside the facility, walls are scrubbed, surfaces repaired, history rewritten. Lena signs the final page of her report, pen hesitating over the signature line. For a moment she writes a name, then stops. She looks toward the sealed reactor wing, where the metal doors gleam under sterile white light. Some truths, she knows, are too powerful for paper. Morning comes quiet and golden, washing over the coastline beyond the plant. The wind carries the salt of the sea, untouched by what nearly was. Lena stands on the observation deck, helmet in her hands, staring toward the horizon. The ocean is calm, indifferent, eternal. For the first time in days, she allows herself to breathe deeply. She doesn't speak, doesn't cry. She simply watches as sunlight breaks over the water, the reflection glimmering against the plant's weathered steel. Somewhere beneath her feet lies the man who saved them all, buried beneath silence and secrecy. The world continues, unaware that dawn almost never came. Weeks pass, and the corridors of the plant hum again with the sounds of repair. New workers arrive, unaware of what was lost here. The walls, scrubbed clean, carry no memory of the screams or alarms. Only the faint scent of scorched metal remains. Lena walks these halls in silence, her footsteps echoing through the sterile brightness. Every panel replaced, every scorch mark painted over, but beneath it all lies the same structure, the same veins that almost bled the world dry. She pauses beside the sealed reactor door. Her hand rests on the cold metal, fingers tracing the faint outline of welded repairs. Behind that barrier lies the truth, one the world will never read about. A conference room filled with polished glass and cold light. The report is being finalized, signed, stamped, and buried. Words like malfunction, protocol, and containment event replace what really happened. Lena watches quietly as the board members congratulate themselves on a successful recovery operation. She doesn't correct them. The truth would only be denied, reshaped, reduced to speculation. Her signature sits at the bottom of the document, the same pen that once shook with grief. The meeting ends. Chairs scrape and laughter returns to the room. She remains seated a moment longer, eyes fixed on the faint reflection of her face in the glass table. Behind it, for an instant, she sees him. That night, the storm returns, rain slashing across the windows of Lena's small apartment. She sits at her kitchen table, a single lamp glowing amber against the dark. In her hands rests a small metal wrench, its engraving worn. D. Rourke. She runs her thumb along the letters, each groove a memory. The city outside hums, unaware of how close it came to never waking again. She closes her eyes and exhales, not in sorrow, but gratitude. The rain drums softly on the glass, echoing the heartbeat that once pulsed in the reactor walls. The world will never say his name, but she will never stop hearing it. Outside, the city hums as always. Cars, lights, laughter. Children play near the waterfront where the reactor dome looms faintly in the mist. A monument to progress. People walk past it daily, never realizing the miracle that let them do so. Life has resumed, indifferent and unaware. The newspapers never mention that night. The data was erased, sealed beneath security clauses and silence. Yet beneath the hum of the city, beneath the ground, the core continues to pulse. Slow, steady, alive. It hums like a heartbeat in the earth. A secret one man saved, and only one woman remembers. At the edge of the facility grounds lies a patch of newly turned earth, unmarked and quiet. A single maintenance plaque sits nearby, engraved with only a date. The night the world almost ended. Lena stands there in silence, the wind carrying the distant echo of turbines. She kneels, placing the small wrench into the soil. No words, no flowers, just the act itself. A truth she refuses to let vanish completely. The horizon glows with dawn once more, the same kind Daniel had fought to see. The wind moves through her hair as the first rays of sunlight break across the sky. For the first time, she smiles. Years drift by, smoothing the scars of the plant into clean, white walls and corporate slogans. The world remembers nothing, yet everything changes. Safety protocols rewritten, systems redesigned, new standards named after. Preventive events. Lena walks through the reconstructed control hall, now filled with young engineers who weren't even born when the reactor trembled. Their laughter echoes in a place once filled with screams. She watches them, silent, proud, and a little hollow. Every light here burns because one man faced the dark. The hum of the machinery is calmer now, rhythmic, steady. But to her, it still sounds like a heartbeat. A lecture hall. Rows of students, eager, unaware. On the screen behind Lena glows a chart labeled the Rourke Principle. Fail-safe redundancy in reactor systems. She speaks calmly, clinically, but each word carries weight. She never tells them who he was, never reveals the origin of the formula that saved thousands. When she pauses, looking at the diagram, her voice falters for just a moment. A private storm flickering behind steady eyes. The class doesn't notice. They only take notes, unaware that the equation they study was written in the final seconds of one man's life. Late one night in the archives of the Nuclear Commission, a technician sifts through old digital records. His cursor hovers over a sealed folder labeled Event 1479A. He opens it out of curiosity, expecting maintenance logs. Instead, he finds video footage, grainy, silent, showing a man turning a massive wheel amid clouds of steam. The metadata lists no name, no record, just one line in the report. Operator unknown, reactor stabilized manual. The technician watches in silence, transfixed. He whispers to himself, who was he? But no one answers. The system times out, and the screen fades to black. Stories begin to surface. Small, whispered, unverifiable. Workers mention the silent engineer who gave his life during an unreported emergency. Conspiracy threads circulate online, half-truths mixed with reverence. The company denies everything, but legends have a way of surviving denial. In late-night broadcasts, journalists call it the meltdown that never happened. And somewhere between fact and faith, a myth takes form. The ghost of a man who saved a city and vanished. Lena watches it all unfold, never speaking. She simply listens, smiling faintly at the world's attempt to piece together what the heart already knows. Years later, the coastal wind moves gently through a small memorial garden built beside the plant. No statues, no names, just a single plaque that reads, "For the unseen hands that kept the light alive." Lena visits quietly at dawn. The same hour, the meltdown was stopped. She kneels beside the plaque, running her fingers across the engraved words. The reactor hums softly behind her, steady and calm. The sun rises over the sea, spilling light across her face. The world, as always, continues, unaware that its peace rests upon the silence of one man who refused to let it burn. Night settles again over the coast, the plant lights blinking like distant stars. Lena dreams of the core, not as metal, but as a living heart bathed in light. She walks through it as if underwater, the hum surrounding her like a lullaby. In the center stands Daniel, calm, unscarred, eyes bright with that familiar steadiness. He doesn't speak, only places his hand against the containment glass. She mirrors the gesture. Between them flows a pulse of light, slow, rhythmic, eternal. She wakes with tears on her cheeks, the faint sound of turbines drifting through her open window. Somewhere deep beneath the earth, the reactor hums once more, steady as breath. Years later, a young trainee walks through the reactor halls, tablet in hand. He pauses by the sealed observation window, where the containment pool glows faintly beneath. His mentor tells him it's one of the safest systems ever built, thanks to a design no one fully understands, a relic from an older era. The trainee nods, eyes tracing the faint engraving on the wall near the railing. A small wrench etched into the metal by an unknown hand. He doesn't know its meaning, but he smiles anyway, feeling something, pride, perhaps, or reverence. The hum of the core vibrates faintly underfoot, steady, protective. In the depths of the control system's archive, an old maintenance signal flickers to life. A forgotten radio frequency, unused for decades. Technicians dismiss it as interference, but Lena, now older, recognizes the pattern. 3 pulses, a pause, 2 more, the code Daniel used when communication broke. She leans close to the speaker, eyes wet, whispering, "You kept your promise." The static hum fades, replaced by a faint mechanical rhythm that sounds unmistakably like a heartbeat. For the first time in years, she smiles without sorrow. At dawn, the sky ignites in gold and fire. The plant hums softly beneath it, alive and peaceful. Lena steps outside, eyes lifting toward the horizon. The sea reflects the sunrise, endless, radiant. She closes her eyes and listens. Beneath the wind, beneath the hum, she hears it. The same steady pulse that once echoed through the walls of steel and fear. A heartbeat that has never stopped. The sun climbs higher, its warmth spilling across her face, and for a fleeting moment, the light feels familiar, as if the dawn itself remembers him. Time moves forward, but some lights never fade. Deep within the reactor, in the quiet where no one ever goes, a sensor records a faint, residual rhythm. Not mechanical, not electrical, but organic. A pulse that began the moment a man turned a wheel and gave the world another dawn. The data flickers endlessly, unread, eternal. Above ground, the city glows, its lights mirrored in the sea. No monuments bear his name, no voices tell his story, yet every lamp, every spark, every heartbeat owes something unseen to that moment. The silence that saved the world continues to hum, steady and alive.